Good morning. It is the final day, unfortunately, the final day of our Friendiversary trip, which makes it Saturday, April 12th. We will be finishing out Rhode Island with a Mimosa and Lighthouse cruise, which should be a lot of fun. And then we're driving back home. Anyway, we'll be able to take Rhode Island off the trip. Nina says thumbs down. We'll be taking Rhode Island off the list. And that will be that. So I'm going to share some of that cruise with you and some of the lighthouses and whatever else happens along the way, if anything else. Welcome to my world. Won't you please come on in? We've officially boarded the boat. We are enjoying our mimosas. Chills. And Nina, are you excited to see some lighthouses?
I'm pretty excited. Yeah, but I'm excited. It's nice.
She said because the trip's almost over, which we always get this way towards the ends of our trips together, because it's going to be a little while to the next one. We always look forward to our trips. But yeah, so we were told that this is the best side for the lighthouses, so once we start moving, I'll show some of the lighthouses and things that we're going to see. Until then, we're just going to enjoy our mimosas. We're leaving the port and heading out to view some lighthouses.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joyce. I'm one of the deckhands and I'm the narrator today. And welcome aboard the Coastal Queen. I want to introduce you to the rest of our crew. We have Captain Dan up in the wheelhouse. He's going to make sure that we get to see some of the sights along the bay. And you guys have, this is a really good time to come out because this is a time of year where there aren't all sorts of other boats that are clogging up our view. So you're going to get to see a part of the Narragansett Bay coastline that's different than people do in the summer.
Nice.
Also, another deckhand is Jack. He's also behind the bar. So come on up and get what you need from him, including we do have some hot chocolate. He makes a mean hot chocolate, but please do not let him skimp on the marshmallows. All right, so off to the left side of our boat in just a moment, you'll see a yellow house on the hill. That is the Commandant's house. So if you were the Commandant of the fort, you were able, that was where you lived. You're up on the hill, you're the first sway. However, it has a much, a different history, and that is that it has the name called the Eisenhower House. Because when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, this is where he would come for his summer time. It's his summer White House. He would play golf over at the country club. And it is said that he actually spent time at the War College talking with Governor Wallace in terms of civil rights. I haven't been able to verify that, but I did hear that from a historian. So just something to think about. Now the thing is that summer White House has something else that's very special about it, and that is it's the only place in the United States where we actually have two summer White Houses next to each other. This next house up on the hill with the red, kind of reddish roof, this is Hammersmith Farm. Now that was the summer White House for John Kennedy, otherwise known as Jack Kennedy if you were living at that time. This is where he and Jackie had their reception. It happened to be her stepfather's house. When her mother married her stepfather, she came down here and lived here for the summers. It is where their reception was, and it is said that there was even a room in the house that was designed to look like the Oval Office. So if he had to address the country while he was down here, it looked like he was still in Washington. This next lighthouse is the one that I think is the most beautiful of any lighthouse I have seen. But I haven't seen all of them. But anyway, what it is that when you are a lighthouse keeper, at first you were given the job as a political position by whoever was in power, and it was to sort of give you something back for helping out. That didn't work. Those people didn't care one hoot about having that light lit. So eventually the Lighthouse Administration was formed, and that is where you begin to see the very stereotypic lighthouse keeper in the uniform with the white gloves, all prim and proper. What you need to know about being a lighthouse keeper is that you not only had to tend to the light, you not only had to clean the windows, you also had to paint the lighthouse, you also had to take care of the grounds. And if an inspector came by unannounced, the place had to be perfect. So before we talk about the Castle Hill Lighthouse, I can share with you off the left side of the boat is the Castle Hill Inn. And that does have a story to the lighthouse. And that Alexander Agassiz, who was a marine biologist, but he also made his money from mining copper out in the Midwest. He built the Castle Hill not as an inn, but as his own home. The Lighthouse Administration said that we needed to move from having a light to a lighthouse at the westernmost part of the Quintic Island. And he was all against it. Why he was against it? Because he felt that the light would get into his daughter's room at night and she wouldn't be able to sleep. By the way, his daughter was an adult at that time, so just give you, tells you something about that. That site is actually what used to be Fort Dumpling. Fort Dumpling was built before the Revolution, it was built just after the Revolutionary War. It didn't last very long because, again, technology moved quickly and it became obsolete. So what happened
Nina's still looking for a moose while we're on the boat.
Fort Weatherall. And Fort Weatherall still is here. It takes about 60 acres on Jamestown. A lot of walking tours if you happen to want to explore Jamestown a little bit. And you can also find some of the batteries and places where military would have been posted. But Fort Weatherall, the buildings themselves here has a kind of history into itself. Towards the end of World War II, not only Fort Weatherall, but Fort Getty on the other side, and also there was a fort over in Saunderstown, were actually German prisoner of war camps. I didn't realize this until some recent time that there were actually tens of thousands of German prisoners in the United States during World War II. They were actually able to pull the prisoners here who had some idea that they didn't really like what was going on, and they gave them, quote, lessons in democracy. And if you go to the Jamestown Historical Society website and look that up, you'll see actually a little film of one of the classrooms. So they learned English, and then they were also able to head right back to Germany at the end of the war, where other prisoners had to go and do some community service before they got there. Now, Joseph Wharton had a friend, actually a distant cousin, who thought that the Horseheads was a pretty good boat, but that he wanted to have a bigger house. This house up on the hill that you can just see the roof of, right? That's Bull Point, and that used to have a 26-room mansion on it that was just a little bit bigger than Horseheads. Because at that point in time,
Newport Bridge.
There were a whole lot of cars that everybody had, and the ferry system really didn't do a good job because they just couldn't handle the volume of cars. So they ended up building this bridge. At the time, it is just a little over 2 miles. The span that we're going under is the middle span, and that had to be upwards of tall enough in order for the battleships to be able to go under it, because we had an active Navy base on the other side. The other thing is that what it did was it put the ferry system out of business almost immediately, but the Department of Transportation offered jobs to anybody who worked on the ferry system that wanted it, and so they were able to do that. Now, many people can say they've been over the Newport Bridge, but you are now an elite group that can say that you have gone below the Newport Bridge.
Woohoo! It's debtor's prison back there. We're going under the bridge again.
Boat, we might talk about a lighthouse that doesn't exist anymore. That pile of rocks there used to be a lighthouse called Gull Rock Light. first came here, graze their goats. It's really good to put the animals on an island because you don't have to build fences. And they take care of the grass for you. Now, Rhode Island has also been the place of several forts, and also the site of the ghost story that the pirate story that we like to tell. Sometime in the 1600s, England got a little pissed off at the amount of privateers that were turning out to be pirates, because the pirates were taking their jewels and other things for themselves instead of giving them to the government. So what they said was, okay, we need to arrest these people. So they did. And at one point, they arrested 32 pirates. 27 of them were found guilty, and they were hung at the end of what is now Longworth. Their bodies were then brought over here, and they were buried at the high-low tide mark at the north end of this island. Now, that isn't a very pleasant story, except you might be interested to know why they were buried at the high-low tide mark. And the reason is because it was believed that if that was where you're buried, your soul would never rest. Because you're halfway in the water and you're halfway out of the water.
Yep.
Eventually, the military, after the Civil War, took over this island, and it became a torpedo sheds where the torpedoes were researched and developed right on this island. You look up Rhode Island, you will find old pictures of it. It does not look anything like what you're looking at today. The torpedoes were actually manufactured by hand and mostly by women. A lot of the women who ended up building these torpedoes ended up with some pretty nasty burns and other chemical issues as they got older. When asked in an interview about those, many of the women said that they feel that it was worth it because of their patriotic duty. At one point, the Navy wanted to automate the torpedoes, and the Union fought very hard not to do that. They did that for two reasons. One is they didn't want to lose control over the quality of the torpedoes, but also they knew that if they automated it, they would end up losing or having to lay off women who, at that point, really needed the money for their jobs as the men in their lives were off at war. Eventually, the military moved out. The island was sold back to Newport, and then Newport sold the island to a man by the name of Tom Rogers. And we all love Tom Rogers, especially after we've had a very celebratory weekend, because he invented spandex. Everything on this island is actually his still. He actually, it's in his family. He died a few years ago. But so all of the buildings are actually on leased land, except for these 4 houses that we're going by right now. These 4 houses are actually his neighborhood. And we had a captain that always liked to tell the story that that's Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. There's a causeway. There's a causeway now. Right, yeah, no, it's a causeway. Yeah. Now, as we come back into the harbor, you're going to have a really pretty sight of the waterfront in Newport. Again, during the high summer, a lot of what you're looking at is actually blocked by a number of big yachts and other boats. But one of the things that you will see here is a brick church that's closest to the waterfront. You'll see the big steeple. This is St. Mary's Church. This is the church that Jack and Jackie Kennedy were married in.
So we are now leaving the marina, heading out of the bay. We will be driving home. That's the rest of the trip, and that's the end of the trip, and that concludes Rhode Island. So we are now 30 states down and 20 to go. In next week's video, you guys will see me continue to work on progress of the 50 states when I take on the state of West Virginia. Until then, go chase your dreams. Didn't get to see any moose, but she did go out to see the seal. There were too many people, I couldn't get out there. It was too far away for me to get on the camera. She saw the seal? Nina, you saw the seal?
Core memory. Broken down building.
She said core memory a lot.